They never told you this because if they did, you'd start questioning everything you thought was real about change, transformation, and the path your life is taking right now. The truth is, the biggest shifts of your existence are not going to feel like explosions of light or grand celebrations. They won't come with applause, neon signs, or sudden clarity. Instead, they sneak in quietly, disguised as boredom, dissatisfaction, a subtle restlessness you can't quite name. You wake up one morning and look around, and nothing is dramatically wrong yet. Everything feels expired. The conversations feel hollow. The routines you used to depend on start to taste stale. Even the way you think begins to feel recycled, as if you've outgrown the frequency you were once comfortable in. It's as though the life surrounding you is made of walls painted with the older versions of yourself. They served you once, but now they no longer fit. And in that stillness, you hear it, the whisper, not a dramatic shout, not a lightning bolt revelation, just a soft but undeniable pull that says, it's time to jump, not physically, not metaphorically, but quantumly. And in that instant, something within you knows that the change isn't about doing more, pushing harder, or chasing new goals. It's about an entirely different kind of movement, one that bypasses the old rules of time and effort. It's about slipping out of one identity and landing in another without needing to bridge the gap. That's the secret. No one explained. That transformation doesn't always build step by step, like a staircase it can leap. And when it leaps, it feels less like climbing and more like disappearing from one version of reality and suddenly appearing in another. Here's the part that bends the mind. Most people hear the phrase quantum jumping and assume it's just an inspiring way to describe personal growth, like a metaphor to motivate you to change your mindset or imagine a brighter future. But what if it's not just a metaphor at all? What if quantum jumping is describing something literal, a process that mirrors the very laws of physics that govern the universe? In quantum mechanics, electrons don't crawl from one orbit to the next. They don't inch their way through space. They simply vanish from one energy state and appear in another instantly when they absorb the right amount of energy. Science calls this a discontinuous transition. There is no in-between, no halfway, just a clean relocation of existence. Now, pause for a second and let that sink in. If reality at its most fundamental level behaves this way, what does it say about you? What if you, as a vibrational being entangled with infinite possibilities, operate under the same principle? What if every moment of restlessness, every quiet pull to leave behind what no longer fits, is not just an emotion, not just a mood, but the signal that your field is preparing to jump? Imagine that every version of you already exists. The successful one, the healed one, the bold one, the one who broke free of old patterns long ago. They're not far away, waiting to be built from scratch. They're here, in parallel timelines, vibrating on different frequencies. And the only thing separating you from them is the signal you broadcast. You don't need to climb toward them. You don't need to earn them. Just like the electron, you vanish from one state and reappear in another the moment you lock into a new frequency. And that's where the revelation lands. Because if this is true, then change doesn't have to be long, heavy, or linear. It doesn't require years of grinding or waiting for permission from reality. It requires coherence, alignment, a decision that vibrates louder than your fear. The moment you shift the broadcast of who you are, the field responds instantly, and you find yourself inhabiting a reality that matches it. No bridge, no staircase, just the jump. And once you see that, once you even begin to sense it, the way you view your life can never be the same again. Think about this for a moment. Every second of your life, you are broadcasting a frequency, not with a radio, not with a device, but with your very being. Your thoughts carry a vibration. Your emotions radiate energy. Your beliefs shape the signal you send into the quantum field around you. And that field is not passive. It is constantly listening, scanning, and responding with absolute precision. This is why your life looks the way it does right now. It's not random. It's not an accident. It's a mirror of the signal you've been unconsciously transmitting. When you wake up and immediately replay the same worries, the same memories, the same frustrations, you're essentially announcing to the field, this is my identity. This is my frequency, keep giving me more of it. The field doesn't argue. It doesn't judge. It doesn't ask if this is what you want. It simply reflects. Which means the only way to relocate into a new version of life is not by fixing what you see on the outside, but by altering the frequency you are sending from within. Here's where the mechanics of the jump become fascinating. In physics, when an electron jumps, it doesn't gradually climb in energy until it reaches a higher orbit. There is no path, no in-between. The moment the required energy is reached, the electron disappears from its old state and reappears in the new one. That leap is instantaneous. Now apply this to yourself. The version of you that is abundant, confident, healed, or free already exists as a potential state in the field, but you don't get there by crawling or forcing. You get there by shifting into coherence so complete that the old identity collapses. When your thoughts, feelings, and actions line up with the frequency of the future you've chosen, the field locks in. And just like the electron, you relocate. You don't slowly become it. You are it. The quantum field doesn't need your effort. It needs your alignment. So why doesn't everyone live this way? Why doesn't everyone leap into their highest timeline? Because most people sabotage their jumps before they stabilize. They feel the pull. They make the choice. Maybe they even sense a wave of freedom as they decide, this is who I am now. And for a moment, the shift is real. But then, silence. The outer world doesn't instantly confirm it. No immediate proof, no instant reward, no magical evidence, and doubt creeps in. The mind whispers, maybe it didn't work, maybe nothing's happening, maybe I was wrong. And in that moment, the signal collapses. They've stopped transmitting the frequency of their future and returned to broadcasting the emotions and beliefs of their past. The field is mechanical. It doesn't respond to what you hope for. It responds to the signal you actually sustain. And most people sustain doubt longer than they sustain certainty. Here's the hidden trap. Waiting for proof is the fastest way to kill a jump, because the moment you look around and ask, where are the results? Why hasn't it shown up yet? You've stepped out of alignment and back into fear. You've told the field, I don't believe it's real unless I can see it, and the field faithfully mirrors back that disbelief. That's why so many people live in cycles of almost changing but never quite arriving. They mistake the silence of recalibration for failure. They confuse the void for emptiness instead of seeing it as the birth of a new reality, and because of that, they collapse their new broadcast and return to the old. But here's the truth. A quantum jump doesn't need time to happen. It needs consistency. The shift occurs the moment your coherence overrides your fear. The question is, can you hold that signal long enough for the field to reorganize around you? Most can't, because they're addicted to evidence. They crave signs that it's working, and in craving, they confess lack. In doubt, they confess disbelief, and disbelief is a broadcast too. That's why the jump doesn't fail, it's aborted. The leap was real, but the return to the old frequency was stronger. So if you've ever felt stuck between who you were and who you want to be, understand this. Nothing is wrong with you. You weren't broken. You didn't fail. You simply stopped transmitting the new signal before it could lock in. The process didn't end because it wasn't real. It ended because you let impatience drown out coherence. And once you see this, you begin to realize that the true skill of quantum jumping is not in making the leaps, in refusing to fall back. The jump is instantaneous, but the choice to remain is ongoing. And the ones who remain are the ones who watch their lives transform in ways so precise, so elegant, they look less like effort and more like destiny. There is a way to make the quantum jump deliberate, not accidental, not something that only happens in rare moments of crisis or sudden decision. It comes down to learning how to shift your broadcast on purpose, how to align your inner signal so completely that the field has no choice but to reorganize around it. You can think of it as a ritual, but not in the sense of candles or elaborate routines. This is a ritual of energy, of coherence, of stepping into an identity that already exists. The process begins when you learn to reinterpret discomfort. Most people feel the tension of change and mistake it for failure. They sense doubt, fear, or restlessness and think it's a sign they're not ready. But in truth, those feelings are interference, static between your current frequency and the one you're tuning into. They don't mean stop, they mean you're on the threshold. Recognizing that discomfort as a signal rather than a warning is the first step. It tells you the jump is already trying to happen. The second step is interruption. When the old emotions surface, when fear pulls at you, when the mind replays its familiar stories, you must interrupt the broadcast. If you allow the body to follow its habitual path, it will drag you back into the old identity. But if you shift your posture, change your breath, move, speak out loud, or do anything that disrupts the pattern, you break the loop. Neuroscience shows that interrupting a thought-emotion cycle creates a window, a moment of possibility where you can choose again. That moment is where the jump lives. It's not about resisting the old self with force. It's about disrupting its grip long enough to create space for the new signal to lock in. Then comes embodiment. This is the heart of the process. You ask yourself, if I already had what I want, if I were already living as that future version of me, how would I feel? And then you let that feeling take over your entire system, not pretending, not forcing, but surrendering into the state as if it were real right now. Because in the quantum field, the feeling is the proof. The broadcast isn't measured by what you say you want, it's measured by the frequency you hold. When you flood your nervous system with the emotions of your chosen timeline, the field can no longer distinguish between memory, imagination, or reality. It responds only to the vibration, and in that moment, the jump begins. But embodiment is incomplete without action. Too many people think quantum jumping means simply meditating, visualizing, or waiting for reality to catch up. That's not how the field works. To fully transmit the new signal, you must act from the identity you've chosen, even in small ways. It could be sending a message you've been avoiding, saying no where you used to say yes, taking a step that the old version of you never would. It doesn't matter if the action is huge or tiny. What matters is that it's aligned. That action tells the field, this is not a fantasy, this is real. I am already this person. And in that alignment, entanglement begins. The field starts to mirror back the signal in ways you can see and feel. Finally, there is detachment. This is where most collapse. After embodying the state and taking action, they begin scanning reality, desperate for proof. But the moment you start looking for results, you've stepped out of the signal and back into fear. Real jumping means staying in the vibration even when nothing has changed yet, especially then. Because that silence, that gap, is not emptiness, it's recalibration. It's the field reorganizing itself around your new coordinates. Detachment doesn't mean indifference, it means faith in the mechanics. It means holding the signal because you know the universe is mechanical, not mystical. You've already jumped. The field is simply catching up. And then comes the most mysterious part of the journey, the void. You've made the shift. You've embodied the new frequency. And suddenly everything around you feels different. Relationships feel off. Conversations feel strained. Opportunities you once craved slip away. Habits you used to cling to feel toxic. This is the void, the space between worlds. At first, it feels like loss. It feels like confusion, like the ground is being pulled out from under you. But in reality, nothing is breaking. Everything is realigning. Imagine you were once tuned to an old radio station, 93.7, and your life was perfectly matched to that signal for people. The routines, the experiences, all vibrating in sync. But now you've shifted to 104.5. The broadcast has changed, and what no longer resonates can't follow you. The void is not emptiness, it's the sacred in-between, where the old timeline is collapsing and the new one has not fully materialized yet. Most people panic here. They mistake the silence for failure, the drifting of relationships for rejection, the disappearance of old habits for punishment. But this is exactly what must happen. The field is purging what doesn't match the new broadcast. It's not cruelty, it's coherence. The void is a detox, an energetic clearing, making space for what aligns with your new frequency. It feels uncomfortable because your nervous system is still tempted to reach back for the familiar, to explain yourself to old patterns, to justify your shift to people who no longer resonate. But this moment is the true test. The void asks only one question: will you hold your signal, or will you collapse back into what you used to be? If you can endure it, if you can sit in the silence and resist the temptation to chase the old, the void becomes the most powerful confirmation that your jump is real. Because everything drifting away is proof that your frequency has changed. It is resonance correcting itself. And the only task in this space is to remain, to breathe into the vibration of your chosen self, to act in ways that match it, to stop apologizing for the evolution no one else can see yet. The void is not the end, it's the passageway. And if you hold your coherence here, what emerges on the other side will not be a slightly improved version of the old life, it will be a completely different reality, one that makes the confusion worth every second. The moment you begin to stabilize in your new frequency, something curious begins to happen. It's not smooth, it's not seamless. Instead, life throws you echoes of your past self. Old doubts resurface. Old habits tug at your sleeve. People from your past suddenly reappear, testing your resolve. Circumstances you thought you had outgrown seem to present themselves one more time. And if you don't understand what's happening, you'll think you've failed. You'll assume you slipped back into your old identity. But this isn't failure at all. These are echoes, vibrations of the old broadcast bouncing back one last time, asking you a simple but powerful question. Are you sure? That's what every test really is. Not a punishment, not the universe trying to trip you up, but a mirror of your old frequency, asking for your final answer. Will you collapse back into who you were, or will you continue to embody who you've already chosen to become? This is why so many people abandon their jump at the last moment. The echoes feel so real that they confuse them for reality. They think the setback means nothing has changed, when in fact it means everything has changed. The old timeline is unraveling, but before it disappears completely, it sends a final pulse. It tries to seduce you back with the comfort of familiarity, and if you mistake that pulse for proof that you failed, you step right back into it. But if you see it for what it is, an echo, not a current, you realize you don't need to fight it or explain it. You only need to hold your signal. You answer not with words, not with explanations, but with embodiment. You breathe into the frequency of your new self. You take actions that the old self would never dare. You stop justifying your evolution to those who demand evidence, because you understand that their need for proof belongs to the old frequency, not the new one. And here's the secret. The echo phase is one of the most powerful confirmations that your jump has already begun to land. If nothing were changing, you wouldn't feel the resistance. You wouldn't see the tension between the old and the new. The chaos itself is proof that the old broadcast is dissolving. Think of it like static when you change a radio station. Between one frequency and the next, you hear noise, distortion, interference. That static doesn't mean the new signal doesn't exist. It means you're in the middle of tuning. And the more consistently you hold the dial, the clearer the new frequency becomes until the old one is gone. But holding the dial requires emotional mastery. And this is where most people misunderstand what mastery actually is. It's not about suppressing doubt, silencing fear, or pretending you're invincible. Mastery means awareness. It means knowing that every emotion is a frequency, and the field will mirror whichever one you embody most consistently. When doubt arises, you don't wrestle with it. You name it. You say, "This is doubt," and then you choose not to live inside it. When impatience shows up, you don't feed it by checking for results every 5 minutes. You observe it, you breathe through it, and you return to the signal of your chosen self. You begin to realize that emotions are not instructions, they are signals. They tell you what frequency you are broadcasting in that moment. And if you don't like what's being sent, you don't need to argue with it. You simply shift. Anchoring the jump is the practice of shifting back faster and faster until your new signal becomes your nervous system's default. At first, it feels like work. You slip into old emotions, and it takes you hours, maybe days, to catch yourself. Then you begin to notice sooner, minutes instead of hours, seconds instead of minutes. Eventually, the return becomes instantaneous. The old frequency tries to pull you back, but you no longer buy the story. You feel the echo, and instead of collapsing into it, you stabilize even deeper in your new vibration. And that's when the field locks in, because the field isn't judging your slips. It isn't punishing you for feeling fear. It's mechanical. It reflects whichever signal you broadcast most consistently. And the moment the new one outweighs the old, reality bends. This is the paradox that most never understand. The less you chase the result, the faster it comes, because chasing implies separation. It implies you don't already have it. It tells the field, I am incomplete, I am lacking, I am waiting, and the field mirrors that lack back to you with precision. But when you choose to hold the frequency of already being, when you act as if the shift is real without demanding proof, the field has no choice but to comply. It reorganizes itself to reflect your broadcast. That's why the practice of anchoring is not about forcing positivity or endless affirmations. It's about coherence. Choosing, again and again, to broadcast the vibration of the self you have already decided to become, even in silence, even in uncertainty, even in the void. And when you master this, something profound happens. The old identity loses its grip. The familiar doubts and habits still try to return, but they no longer stick. You become emotionally unavailable for the self that once defined you. You stop rehearsing the story of limitation, of waiting, of lack. You collapse it entirely, and the new self doesn't feel like a fantasy anymore. It feels like home. That's anchoring the jump, when the broadcast becomes so stable, so consistent, that the quantum field no longer has to test or echo. It simply reflects, and that reflection is what we call reality. At first, the evidence of your new timeline doesn't look the way you imagined. It doesn't announce itself with a grand entrance or sweep you into an entirely different life overnight. Instead, it slips in quietly, like whispers at the edge of your awareness. You begin to notice subtle synchronicities, small alignments that almost feel too perfect to be coincidence. Someone calls you at the exact moment you were thinking about them. An opportunity appears out of nowhere that seems tailor-made for the identity you've been broadcasting. A door that you never thought existed suddenly swings open, or a person enters your life who reflects back the exact qualities you've been embodying. These aren't accidents. They are confirmations that the field has begun to recalibrate around your new frequency. It's the proof that your broadcast has locked in. But here's the key: you have to see these signs for what they are. Too many people dismiss them as random, waiting instead for massive, undeniable transformation before they'll accept that their jump is real. They overlook the synchronicities, the shifts in energy, the quiet moments of alignment, because they're looking for fireworks. Yet the quantum field rarely moves with fireworks. It moves with rhythm, precision, elegance. Just as a radio station doesn't blast static and then suddenly shift to perfect clarity in 1 second, the tuning comes gradually. The signal sharpens, the static fades, and then the new station is all you hear. Reality works the same way. Those first synchronicities, those small alignments, are the sharpening of your signal. They're the evidence that the old frequency is dissolving and the new one is stabilizing. And if you choose to honor them as proof, rather than dismiss them as coincidence, you strengthen your signal even more. As this process deepens, you'll feel the difference inside you long before you see it fully reflected outside. You'll notice that you react differently, that situations that used to trigger you no longer have power. Conversations feel lighter. Choices that once caused hesitation now feel obvious. You carry yourself differently, not because you forced it, but because the old identity no longer lives in your nervous system. This is how the field knows your jump is real, not by what you demand, but by what you embody without effort. And the more consistently you hold this state, the more undeniable the external proof becomes. Opportunities that align with your frequency will not just appear, they will begin to multiply. People will start treating you differently, not because they changed, but because your signal did. You'll feel like you've stepped into a different version of the same world, because you have. This is the moment you realize that quantum jumping is not about forcing life to give you what you want. It's about becoming the signal that naturally attracts it. When you stop chasing results and start embodying coherence, the universe doesn't resist you, it mirrors you. And in that mirror, you see the undeniable evidence that you have relocated. You have become the version of yourself that once felt unreachable. And here lies the ultimate truth. The real power isn't in the jump itself, it's in remaining. Anyone can have a breakthrough moment. Anyone can decide to change, feel the rush of a new identity, and broadcast it for a day. But remaining in that broadcast, sustaining it through the void, holding it even when the world has not yet caught up, that is where mastery lives. Remaining is not about effort. It's not about repeating affirmations until you're exhausted or trying to stay in a constant state of high energy. Remaining means you've chosen certainty. Not certainty in the outcome, but certainty in yourself. Certainty that no matter what echoes, no matter what silence, no matter how long it takes for the outer world to rearrange, you are unwavering in the broadcast of who you are. You've stopped negotiating with the old self. You've stopped rehearsing the story of lack. You've stopped waiting for permission to be who you already are. And in that stillness, in that consistency, the quantum field bends. You may have thought that the universe rewards those who work hardest, those who hustle and grind. But in truth, the universe rewards those who transmit most clearly. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions are incoherent, when you say one thing, feel another, and act in ways that contradict both, the field receives static, and static can't lock in. But when every part of you aligns, when your choices, your emotions, and your self-image broadcast the same frequency, the field has no choice but to match it. That's when remaining becomes effortless, because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're no longer trying to prove or convince. You simply are. And when you are, reality organizes around you with the precision of a mirror that never lies. Remaining in the jump transforms you from a seeker into a transmitter. Seekers look for signs, proof, and validation. Transmitters generate them. A seeker asks, "When will it happen?" A transmitter says, "It already has." A seeker waits for evidence to believe. A transmitter believes, and the evidence arrives. And this is the essence of quantum jumping, not chasing the timeline, but becoming the vibration until the timeline has no choice but to reveal itself. Once you embody this truth, life ceases to feel like a struggle. It begins to feel inevitable. The opportunities, the relationships, the breakthroughs, they don't arrive as if by chance. They arrive as resonance, as the natural consequence of coherence held long enough to be undeniable. So, if you've ever wondered how to know whether your jump is real, the answer is not in how dramatic the external changes look, but in how deeply you've stabilized your internal broadcast. Are you still rehearsing your past, or are you broadcasting your future? That single question determines everything. Because when you stop seeking the shift and start becoming the shift, the world reorganizes without resistance. It won't be loud, it won't be dramatic, it will be subtle, elegant, inevitable. You'll meet someone at the exact moment you stopped needing them. You'll receive an idea so perfect, so aligned, that it feels like it was waiting for you all along. An opportunity will appear that makes no logical sense, but every energetic sense. These are not coincidences, they are confirmations. Proof that the field has heard your signal and is now echoing it back with precision. And the most profound part of all this is that you no longer need to wait for proof to trust the process. You no longer ask, "Is it working?" Because you already know. The frequency you hold is the result. The reality that appears around you is only the echo. And once you reach this place, once you become the signal instead of chasing the signal, you understand why quantum jumping is not a metaphor. It is not wishful thinking. It is a process, a mechanical, precise, repeatable process of alignment. The only question is whether you're willing to hold the broadcast long enough for reality to catch up. And when you do, you discover that the jump was never about becoming someone new. It was about remembering who you already were, and finally living as them with certainty.